What's up everyone, Lion Roar here, and we have a brand new clan in Bloodline Heroes of Lithis. It is the Tide Raisers. So of course, I'm going to do a breakdown, talk about the trait, and which might be better, the male or the female. But first, download Bloodline Heroes of Lithis, a mobile RPG action fighting game where you can marry your champions to create new and unique hybrids. Use the link in the description to start with some free stuff, including gold and diamonds. See you hopefully soon. Alright, so let's go ahead and take a look at the trait first. It is called Aquatic Barrier, and do note that this is on an epic hero, so of course the number is going to be higher the higher the rarity. But its effect says, for the first 10 seconds after the battle starts, increases all allied champions' strength resistance in the front row by 10.67%, and it looks like it will go all the way up to around 25% with a level 22 trait. This effect can't be stacked. So I'll tell you what, it's hard for me to know how good this trait's going to be, and really honestly the wording is kind of confusing, so I'm going to try to explain it for you. But since they added the 10-second after battle starts to a lot of the traits, some of them worked, some of them haven't. Clearly the trait gets a lot worse if it's an actual 10 seconds, so I don't love seeing that, especially with a trait here that I don't think is necessarily going to have an extremely powerful effect. So what is strength resistance? From my understanding of it, it basically means that when opposing heroes go to use their ultimates or deal skill damage, their strength is reduced when they use it. So their regular attacks are still going to stay the same, but the skill damage is going to be reduced. In other words, it's another type of damage reduction. So take note of that. I wish with a trait like this it lasted the whole match. If it's really going to last 10 seconds, it's only okay. But let's take a look at both the male and the female and their actual skills. Take note, they are both tanks, and I'm going to go through the skills in the order they usually reveal themselves during a battle, which is usually the passive first, and then we see like an active skill, and then typically the ultimate comes after that. So let's take a look at the passive. This is like the least text I've ever seen on a Bloodline champion. Buffering current increases the caster's strength resistance by 35%. So not only do you have the strength resistance on the trait for the first 10 seconds, but you get this the whole time. So that's kind of what I wish I saw with the trait. But since he's going to have it on the passive, that's okay. I'm still not sure how good that is in particular. However, this being on the passive, I think is much more powerful than on the trait, because we're seeing this. I mean, it doesn't say just the front row, right? Like, so I feel like this is applying to every opposing hero. So I do think that there's some potential here, but I think it's going to take playtesting it to really know. Let's take a look at the active special, Tide of Punishment. Slams the ground to attack all nearby enemies, dealing damage equal to 460% of the caster's strength, which inflicts stun on them for 1.5 seconds. The slam creates a water puddle for 5 seconds, increasing all allied champions' strength resistance by 25%, reducing all enemies' attack speed by 30% when they're in the puddle. The strength resistance boost effect can stack with the champion's own passive skills. So now we not only have the trait, but the passive, and you get this here now too. So this is interesting because when it starts stacking like this, it could make it really difficult for opposing teams to make any headway. I'm thinking especially if you pair it with a really controlling team. Let's say male Water and Sun and like female Galabar, where you're just like stun locking them and not taking damage and constantly healing. It's going to be really annoying to deal with. Let's take a look at the ultimate, Torrent of Despair. After casting, creates a surge of torrent every 1 second at 2 random enemies' location within a certain range in the next 4 seconds, launching the target airborne, dealing damage equal to 300% of the caster's strength, inflicting stunned for 1 second. Alright, so an interesting effect, because I'm imagining that this is playing out a lot like the male Water and Sun's pulsing, except this lasts for 4 seconds. Of course, if you can somehow speed up the ultimate going off, you can... I don't know if you'll be able to do it quite like male Water and Sun's frequent pulsing, but you could potentially get close depending on how fast you can get that energy gain through increased attack speed and through increased energy gain rate and things like that. All right, so I think if you can keep the pulsing going, that's potentially going to create both a really difficult to deal with CC situation, crowd control, while dealing damage, which I think could be really powerful. Combined with everything else here, I'm thinking that when you create a team with synergy that has the male, it's going to be very difficult for your team to take damage, and you pair him with another big damage dealer, you're basically just dealing this like constant pulsing damage, and you're really just able to, first of all, stun lock your opponent and then whittle them down. I think when I first read the male's skills, I wasn't overly impressed. But the more I think about how it can be used, which is, of course, really important, the synergy, the more I'm liking him. So I'm intrigued. I'm really intrigued. And I think that most people will jump to the female first. And quite honestly, when we get to the female, I'm favoring her up front. But I think playtesting is going to show us which one's actually better, the male or the female. So let's take a look at the female and see how she compares. The passive is Soothing Billow. Quickly restores 12% of the caster's max constitution within 2 seconds each time an active skill or ultimate skill is cast. That's a lot. If you got 10 champions on the board, it doesn't say enemy, it doesn't say ally. So if it's going to work like it's written, which again we won't know till we test, but if it works like it's written, I think she's just going to be gaining a ton of freaking life. So there is that. Now you got the male who's preventing damage from being taken in the first place, and the female who's actually restoring her own constitution. When the caster's constitution is lower than 50%, the recovery effect is increased by 30%. So you get her down low, and she's actually filling back up even faster. The active special, a Ripple of Impact, summons a wave of water towards the furthest enemy, dealing damage to all enemies along the path equal to 250% of the caster's strength, launching them airborne. When the wave reaches its destination, it recedes and pulls all enemies along the path, dealing damage equal to 270% of the caster's strength. For every additional enemy hit, the skill's remaining cooldown is reduced by 6%. So this is a good way to deal some damage. A lot of this text is, I mean, they're using terms like wave and whatever, but the actual like function of the special where you're shooting some damage across the map and then pulling enemies to a certain part is a sort of like soft control type of feature. You would want to pair that, of course, where you're pulling them into another hero like back in the day, female Dvala or something that's just going to pull around them. Of course, the female Dvala has fallen out of favor now. So, you know, there's other champions that you probably could really lean on them dealing damage in a small area. Okay. Like one for example might be female Sophos in her Ink, is one that I'm thinking of. Okay, let's take a look at the ultimate. Apocalyptic Flood summons a massive wave of water from above that sweeps over the entire area, dealing damage to all enemies equal to 650%. So that's some text I like to see. Big area of effect damage dealer, and that is a lot of damage. If you've watched my channel across multiple games, you know I just really favor them nuke teams. I really like creating a team that just wipes out the whole entire opposition before you know what to hit them. Of course, the weakness of a nuke team is going to be that if you don't get the nuke right away, then typically then the team can start to fall behind. So it's a very glass cannon approach where you want to win fast and early. All right, so man, I didn't even finish that. So it's 650% of the caster's strength. Also, inflicting stunned for 5 seconds. 5 seconds! 5 seconds of stunned. That's forever in this. Sometimes the matches are 10 seconds. That's half the match, potentially. I think with a lot of the champions they've released recently, it's starting to draw the matches out a little bit more, especially with more healing and things like that. Actual legitimate healing. You know, I think that stunned becomes more important, especially 5 seconds in matches like that where you want to keep them off base. The damage and stunned effects will decrease with distance, but not lower than 325% of the caster's strength, inflicting 2 seconds of stunned. I'll tell you what, the skills on both of these, they're interesting for tanks. I think the male, to me, appears a little more tanky, but I think she's pretty tanky too, especially with how much health she's going to regain. And the fact that it's kind of cool that you have a tank who's actually dealing damage. That's what's making these kind of interesting. And why I originally thought, you know what, maybe the female's better. And for right now in this video, I'm still going to tell you, I think the female's better. And it's because I understand this effect better. We've seen what this kind of damage can do. We know the power of AoE effects. We know crowd control. Like, we're seeing all of that in her text, which I really like. So I'm leaning towards her. I would love to level both and test both, because I think in certain synergies, maybe the male could be just as good. I do think you need to be very careful with how you build him and the team around him. I think she is going to be more flexible and be able to put into more strategies. I think for newer players, she's one you can slot in no matter what your synergy is. She kind of takes care of things herself, heals herself and deals a ton of damage, and does crowd control. What more could you ask for? Honestly, I think that these standalone heroes that can potentially win the game on their own are like the best ones. So I'm leaning towards summoning for her to level her up. Of course, I want to get the companion. But man, I'm kind of liking the look of that male too. So I am flip-flopping a bit. But what do you think? I want to know in the comments, when you read the text, when you thought about the synergies, like really thought about what they do, who did you think was better? My vote's going to be the female for now, but I am going to give potential for the male to actually, I would say at least be even. So that's what I'm going to start with. So what kind of traits do we want to see on these particular heroes? I think they kind of require different ones. Because they're tanks and you're probably putting them in the front, although not always. But I like honorable on these, especially, you know, the male's already reducing the amount of damage taking, and now you reduce that even more. It just starts to compound. Compound interest is one of the most powerful forces in the galaxy. So if you compound damage reduction, your team just might not take damage. All right, so I think that there's the potential for honorable to be really good on both of them, especially not a lot of people talk about this, but like honorable is really good with healing heroes. You would think energy would, or energetic would be, because it's the healing is like getting the constitution back, and if you have more of it, you would think that would be better. But honorable is actually better for that, because it is harder with the damage reduction. It's harder to deal damage to a hero with the honorable, meaning that it takes a lot more work to get that constitution down. So when you bring the constitution back up, they just have to work that much harder. Having said that, energetic is another good one on tank heroes. You could probably put both on there. And I think for the female specifically, brutal is going to be vital. The male, I don't know. The male, sure, he does some damage, but you might just want to keep him alive and put traits on him that really assist the rest of the team. So, you know, for example, I've really been liking Devout on heroes now that we've got Male Water and Sun out there. So even though, like, I think Devout would be good. If you run both of them on the same team, you could probably run it on him, and it really affects her. But if there's a Male Water and Sun on your team, who I think is going to go really well with both of these, then Devout is a great one to have on at least one of your champions. It really, especially with the effects that we're seeing on both of these, is going to keep your opponent from dealing much damage to your team right off the bat. You might be able to get out ahead, especially with all the damage coming from Male Water and Sun, perhaps from her. You can take out one or multiple heroes of theirs before they do any damage to you. Having said that, that of course is barring a meta which just becomes the same teams facing each other, in which case you just need to be faster, and that's all there is to it. Faster and tougher, of course, you know, with vigor. All right, so I think that's enough thoughts on traits. Other than when I'm saying faster, I mean, you know, of course you want to put like the Stone Thrower clan trait on, agile, focus, all good traits to be faster. Anyway, that's enough of that. I'm curious what you think. If you enjoy videos like this, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that bell notification, and I will catch you in the next one.